Welcome. My name is Benebo. There is a time to sow and there is a time to harvest, so the saying goes. So the harvesting always comes. The crops harvesting always arrives between 3 months and 9 months after the date of farming a specific crop. So it's advisable to anticipate the harvest and accordingly prepare for it. The reason being that any unnecessary oversight and some harvest will be lost and subsistence capacity reduced. A reasonable approach then is a single-page documentation of the harvesting scheduling such that there is a clear-cut view of when each one starts and ends, and so none is missed. A synchronized scheduling of the harvesting is important in that sense, as to leave room for the prompt judicious processing of the farm biotics waste. Leaving any of such parts in the soil for too long certainly will cause a rotting of the root section for such plants as the bitter leaf, quinoa, and the soya, which are faster harvested by cutting off the stem close to the roots. In synopsis then, this episode entitled Subsistence Farms Crops Harvesting presents a structuring of an orderly process of harvesting the crops, explanation of the tasks performed with respect to each crop of the essential foods, the mechanism that will be adopted to perform the tasks, and the organizing of the tasks into a process that will be integrated into the farming process automation controller system. The driver rationale guiding harvesting of the essential fruit through synchronized scheduling has the object of evolving a synchronized harvesting scheduling suitable for effectively managing the harvesting of several crops. This synchronized scheduling of harvesting process is anticipated to be implemented with a Gantt chart, the vertical axis of which is the crops by name, and the horizontal axis of which is the harvesting time spans, start and finish times of the harvesting. So then the data about the harvesting of each crop has to be gathered and then organized into the Gantt chart. The very first data collection for the harvesting Gantt chart clearly has to address the start times of the harvesting of each crop. Of course, that can be determined from the experiential times of the time to fully grown of the crop, or the signaling of having borne fruits as with the tubers. These can be listed here as follows in the table. For black-eyed peas, it's 3 months. For bitter leaf, it's 1 month. For tomatoes, it's 3 months. For onion, it's 4 months. For cassava, it's 9 months for the short light and 18 months for the long light. Sweet yellow potatoes is 3.5 months. Sweet white potatoes is also 3.5 months. Quinoa is 4 months and soybeans is 5 months. As can be observed, the growth time spans are all very close except for cassava and soybean. While this is no issue in the tropical countries, as the planting condition of soil is almost always met, so planting can be staggered to ensure good harvest. For the northern hemispherical countries, this is not the case. For those countries, the planting of most of the crops must occur in about late April, forcing rapid planting of the crops within short span of time, and as a result, near same time harvesting that, if not well managed, can result in poor harvest, as some crops do not get to be harvested timely and are lost. With these approximate times of harvesting, the starting points for the Gantt chart to help manage the harvesting are now determined. However, the span of each harvesting will be necessary to determine the overlaps of the harvesting. The goal is to better manage the harvest during the time span available before harvest turns bad. These time spans of harvesting specific crops, of course, are dependent on the harvesting tasks and the total of the individual tasks performance durations. Accordingly, it is reasonable then to review the harvesting of each crop with an object to evaluate the tasks that compose the harvesting as well as estimate the approximate performance times, the sum of which gives the time span of the crop-specific harvesting time. The crop black-eyed peas harvesting occurs in two task sets. First is the harvesting when the pod is still green for green beans, and second is when the harvesting of the crop is made when the pod is yellow and dry and easily splits open to let out the peas. Both tasks consist of two activities. The green bean harvesting task consists of the two activities. Activities 1, generally hold the plant by the pod. Activity 2, snap the pod off the plant or shear it. These activities are then effectively repeated for as many pods as are on each plant and for as many plants as were planted. The green bean harvesting task consists of two activities. The same with the brown pod after it has fully matured. And similarly, you have to hold the plant by the pod, that's activity 1. And then activity 2, crush the pod to split open the pod and let loose the beans. Again, these activities are then effectively repeated for as many pods as are on each plant and for as many plants as were planted or left over after the harvesting of the green beans. Harvesting the crop bitter leaf consists of only one task, which consists of 3 activities. Activity 1, sever the whole plant towards the top. Activity 2, collect the stem pieces. And activity 3, shear the leaves of the stem. These activities are then effectively repeated for as many bitter leaf plants as were planted. Harvesting the crop tomato consists of also one task, which consists of 3 tasks as well. Activity 1, hold the plant and the fruit. Activity 2, shear the fruit attachment to the plant. Activity 3 essentially requires that whatever is left be held properly, in threshold. Again, these activities are then effectively repeated for as many tomatoes per plant for as many plants as were planted. For the case of harvesting onion, that also consists of one task, but consists of 2 activities. Activity 1, again, hold the plant and the fruit. Activity 2, gently pull it out of the ground. Again, these are effectively repeated. Cassava harvesting occurs and consists of one task as well, but 3 activities. Activity 1, circularly wipe the removal of the top soil about the circular hole that was dug and filled with biofertilizer above the stem at ground level, and then gently lift off the plant from the ground. Then activity 3, snap removal of the tubers from the stem one at a time. These activities are then effectively repeated for as many cassava plants as were planted. Harvesting sweet yellow potatoes starts with, again, one task, but with 2 activities. Again, activity 1, circular swelling removal of the topsoil as with the cassava. Activity 2, followed by the plant being lifted out gently off the ground, and then the snap removal of the tubers from the stem. The same is repeated again for every one of the points at which a plant was made. For sweet white potato with the pink skin, the harvesting also consists of only one task, but the task, like the yellow sweet potato, has 3 activities. Again, using your hand, circularly swirl around the top of the soil and remove all of the topsoil about the stem at ground level. And then activity 2, followed by the plant being lifted out gently off the ground. And activity 3, again, snap removal of the tubers from the stem. Once again, these activities are also effectively repeated for as many plants. Harvesting quinoa is a little different. It also still consists of one task. It takes activity 1 to cut the stalks, and then activity 2, drying them. Activity 3, threshing them to separate the seeds. Activity 4, winnowing them to remove the chaff. And then activity 5, wash the processed seed to remove the saponin, which is a very bitter soap-like coating. Harvesting soybeans is similar to that of quinoa, but not quite. It all again consists of one task and consists of 3 activities. Activity 1, cut the stalk. Activity 2, dry them. And activity 3, thresh to separate the seeds. Now, the harvesting task's performance time evaluation is entirely different. Clearly, most of the task of harvesting in each crop, with respect to each crop, is performed manually. And though in the abstract or in theory some are mechanizable, such as the harvesting of the bitter leaf, potato, cassava, quinoa, and soy, in practice, the harvesting activities would not be mechanized considering the size of the land committed to the farming. So the duration of harvesting of each crop would be estimated as the sum of the assignments of performance time to each activity based on manual labor and multiplied by the required frequency of the performance per plant and by the number of plants, as was explained with respect to the repetitions. So most data of the performance times will be based on guess estimation of the manual tasks performance times. However, further distinctions still need be made for refinement and accommodation of the activities such as clearing, etc., that must still be performed away from the farm proper as distinct from the crop that do not require such off-the-farm tasks. Accordingly, for all intents and purposes, only those tasks that occur on the farm are considered or termed harvesting here, while all activities that occur off the farm are grouped as post-processing. So the performance times are partitioned into harvest times and post-processing times. By the task of harvesting for black-eyed peas, the guess estimate times are for the green beans harvesting task 1. The performance times are activity 1, hold the plant, and that's estimated at 15 seconds. Activity 2, snap the beans, that's also estimated at 15 seconds. So the combined total will be 30 seconds per pod, and therefore we'll then have 30 seconds per pod times as many pods as we have on a plant times as many plants as we have. The brown beans task performance times are calculated the same way. Hold the plant for 15 seconds, crush, split open the pod to release the seeds for 25 seconds, and so we calculate the total as 40 seconds per pod for as many pods as we have per plant times as many plants as we had. By the task of harvesting bitter leaf, the guess estimate time would be for activity 1, cut the plants, that will be 15 seconds. Activity 2, collect the plants together, that will be 25 seconds to pick up the plants. Activity 3, shear off the leaves, that will be another 20 seconds, for a total harvest time of 60 seconds per plant for as many plants as are planted. By the task of harvesting tomatoes, the guess estimate time is based on activity 1, hold the plant and the fruit, 15 seconds, shear the fruit's attachment to the plant itself, that will take 25 seconds, and then for a total harvest time of 40 seconds per fruit for as many fruits or tomatoes as there are on a plant times as many plants as were planted. Again, by the task of harvesting onion, the guess estimate time would be, again, activity 1, pull the plants when top falls over, that will be 15 seconds, and then activity 2, cure it in a dry ventilated area for 2 to 4 weeks. But that will be separated out as post-processing because now it's occurring off the farm. By the task of harvesting cassava, the guess estimated times would be activity 1, again circularly remove the soil off the biofertilizer part of the soil off the circular hole that was dug in which it was planted, and we estimate that to be about 15 seconds, and then pull the stem gently up the ground, and that should be about 20 seconds. Then again the removal of each tuber for another 30 seconds, for a total harvest time of 35 seconds plus 30 times the number of tubers per plant times the number of plants of cassava that were planted. By the task of harvesting sweet yellow potatoes, the guess estimate times will be for activity 1, circular removal of the soil, the same thing as for the cassava because the harvesting process is the same, and that is for 15 seconds, and then to gently pull the stem out of the biofertilizer is about 20 seconds, and then for the removal of the tubers, about 30 seconds per tuber. So once again, it will be 35 seconds plus 30 seconds times the number of tubers per plant times the number of plants that were planted. The post-processing tasks, of course, are different. We have activity 1, cure it for 1 to 2 weeks at about 80 to 85 degrees, and that will be post-processing. By the task of harvesting sweet white potato, the guess estimate time again will be activity 1, circular removal of the soil. They are all planted about similar way, so the the harvesting is also similar. And then activity 2, gently pull up the stem out of the biofertilizer that has been cleaned out. That's another 20 seconds. And then activity 3, removal of the tubers, which we again give 30 seconds for a total harvest time of 35 seconds plus 30 seconds times the number of tubers with the total times the number of plants of sweet potato. Of course, there is a post-processing task, activity 1, where you're going to cure it for 4 to 7 days at 80 to 85, just as with the yellow sweet potato. By the task of harvesting quinoa, the guess estimate time, activity 1, cutting the seed heads, is 15 seconds, and that is for a total of 15 seconds. The post-processing, however, would be to dry them, could take up to 48 hours. So that is separately set away. Activity 2 of the post-processing requires threshing it to separate the seeds. We take that to mean to take 30 seconds times as many plants as there are. Then winnowing to remove the chaff. That would depend on the number of seeds and the size of the hand of each person. We will estimate that to be 25 seconds per handful times as many batches that could be held. And then, of course, wash the fruits to remove the saponin. By the task of harvesting soy, the guess estimate times would be activity 1, cutting the stalk again, 15 seconds at the base, and drying them would be possibly another 48, which would be another post-processing, and then threshing to separate the seeds again, maybe 24 hours, for a total of 72 hours, roughly speaking. And at this point in time that we have now got the task performance times, we can now compute the task performance times and then use it to calculate the Gantt chart, and the Gantt chart could now be constructed. The ordering of the vertical axis, however, will start with the crops that harvest first and then end with the crops that harvest last, and is as listed. The order would be bitter leaf, which is 1 month, black eye peas, green beans is 3 months, GMO-free tomato is 3 months, sweet yellow potato is 3.5 months, sweet white potato is 3.5 months, quinoa is 4 months, onion is 4 months, black eye peas, brown peas is 5 months, soy beans is 5 months, cassava version 1, that is short light version, is 9 months, and the long light version is 18 months. Now cassava will take 2 different axes, vertical spacing. The reason is because it's distinctly different, and its post-processing is the same for both cases, and it will be clear shortly while we will do it that way. And here is the reason. For reasons of focus on the crops, the post-processing task would be placed on the task horizontal for each crop instead of separate lines just below the end of the preceding task, as is the norm. In effect, the Gantt chart here for harvesting should be slightly different from the standard, in the sense that instead of the activities listed below each other and shifted to allow for end at stand time, they will all be on the same line, such that the first batch would be the harvesting time, and the second batch would be the pre-processing times, but they will be pretty much on the same axis of the vertical. The conclusion that could be drawn here then is that, in fact, an organized, synchronized harvesting scheme can be constructed to help manage harvesting. So even the lone subsistence farmer can handle the harvesting without any crop going bad, and without regard to how many crops that he needs to harvest. The scheduling being so synchronized gives a panoramic view of what is to be done, and therefore allows one to be efficient. Remarkably, as the development here shows, the subsistence farmer can in fact construct the harvesting guidance Gantt chart even preemptively before the harvest and keep refining it right up to the harvest, and therefore make the most of the planning. And it's a wrap. And on that note, I say to you, thank you so much for having come to listen to this observation about efforts aimed at alleviating world hunger through subsistence farming by both urban dweller farmers and emergent countries' small farm farmers. You are truly appreciated, and if you would like to get privileged view or reader information, or access podcasts of specialized contents, or access even vertically integrated concepts, then I implore you to join my support club and enjoy that privileged status. Moreover, while still here, do please take a moment and subscribe to the channel as to be informed of the publication of every new episode as soon as it is released. Thank you. Bye. Till next episode.